Steven, aka Samaya, who has started this YouTube channel called Shivelight, and he made a
Yeah.
mix featuring some of the music that I put in my blog, and that turned into his Fusion Alchemist mix, which has the Android Jones artwork, and for some
Yeah.
reason it just completely blew up on YouTube.
I felt as if I encountered the origin of the flying carpet because I was flying on a carpet, if that makes sense. So when I use that music for some of these journeys, it was just like so on point, and it gave me a new appreciation for world music.
That's mostly credit to Steven. He has a very good ear for what is music that is supportive of that kind of experience and is like inducive to a kind of a good set and setting, and a lot of the people who use the music, like it's like they genuinely use it as a kind of service for when they're in that kind of mind space.
All right, we are rolling, and I'm here with Aryan Ashoori. How's it going today, man?
Yeah, it's going well, man. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thanks so much for taking the time, man.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, brother. So I learned about you through the channel Shivelight on YouTube, which is one of my favorite channels. It's been host to numerous artists that I'm a big fan of. And yeah, clearly we're into a lot of the same stuff. So it'd be, great just to get your background. So I guess let's start with you, man. I mean, when and how did you become interested in music and your journey into being a fan of music, into producing it, and then deciding you want to create a label and like a platform like Shivelight and Outtallectuals?
Yeah, cool. So, it's probably like one of those cliche things. I started doing music when I was a kid. So, one of my mom's close friends was the daughter of a famous pianist. So, I grew up in Iran, and yeah, her dad was kind of known within the kind of pianist circles. I think like the classic musical societies in Iran, and so by virtue of that, she learned the piano and she was very good, and she kind of became a kind of home teacher for me for a few years from when I was like, I think I remember it said like when my height reaches like this light switch in somewhere in our house, like I was able to have lessons. And then I did that for like 6 7 years, and in Iran, when we're growing up being a teenager, then like getting illegal satellite TV and kind of learning about I'll put it down to two things, maybe like video games, from like the early ons, but I think Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 for sure, and maybe the GTA games. Actually, the radio stations on there kind of really started to get my mind going, and also just the MTV generation, Jackass, all these kind of things just had a massive influence in forming like my early on character. And then me and my family moved to the UK in 2006. And from like 2004, 2006, when I was in high school in Iran, there was kind of a punk scene and skateboarding scene that I was involved with it back home. And that was really like amazing. It was almost like the first time there was that kind of scene in the country. So it was a lot of energy, like skateboarders, graffiti artists, people are into psychedelics. It was just like it was like the 60s, the 90s, the 2000s all happening at the same time in this one group of maybe like 40, 50 people. And so it got into a lot of the kind of alternative culture there. And then when I moved to the UK, I was trying to make a band, but I couldn't. So I started making like MIDI Guitar Pro type compositions. And when you realize it's hard to like get a band together, I started trying to make those MIDIs into electronic music, and kind of my interests verged from like the kind of rock rock and hip hop side to the electronic side once I started to like experience live electronic music as well. And then it just kind of went from there. And yeah, and then when I went to university, I kind of got involved. I was studying, but I kind of wanted to be involved with the arts as well, and kind of had this vision of what I want, like my favorite music to sound like. So the we had a group chat with some friends, and we're all sharing music on Facebook together. And I thought, okay, this could be a cool idea as a Facebook group. This is like 2000 maybe 11 or 10 when
Mhm.
Facebook was a thing.
Right.
Uh, and yeah, so through that music group, I decided to like call it like Outtallectual Artists. And then that turned into the label. So the label's launched on like 11/11/11, and with a free
Yeah.
compilation. And then after a few compilation, it turned into like actual music label in like 2014/15. And yeah, that's the label. I'll avoid talking about the other things. Otherwise, it'll just be like a 20-minute monologue. So, but yeah.
Yeah. No worries, man. Wow, that's dope, and definitely resonate a lot with your story there. When you first discovered like electronic music, I think you said it was kind of like during a live show, or you were started to go to some events. Do you remember what artists and stuff that those were?
Yeah, it was. So this was around 2008. It was like in the UK, it was peak dubstep era. So this was like pre Skrillex, but like Casper and Roscoe, that kind of movement. And drum and bass was in a really healthy place as well. So I went to university in a small town called Bath, which is a kind of historic town, about 15 minutes away from Bristol. And Bristol is kind of the mecca of bass music. I would say globally, so many good artists are from there. From like, if you go back to the kind of Massive Attack and Archive kind of OG trip hop era to like all the culprits and yeah, so much of the modern electronic music also is inspired from there. So yeah, I started going to some raves there, and then just experiencing those kind of raves was just mind-boggling at the time.
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess that was kind of the start of it. But I was really into like metal and rock music all my life. I still am, and by that point, I'd already been to like, I don't know, tens if not hundreds of metal gigs since I arrived in the UK, and that was just phenomenal. Like the experience of a metal show still, I feel like when it's done well, it is kind of like something else, even compared to a lot of the electronic music, because of the like raw liveness of it, you know?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly the same. I came
Sorry.
from the metal scene. I was just saying, like, I came from the metal scene, the metal band, into electronic music, which definitely did inform the type of electronic music that I like. It's
Mm,
always been a little darker, a little more moody, a little more serious, because there is like super pretty and happy electronic music out there, and that has its place. But yeah, I was always finding myself being attracted to a little more industrial stuff. I think Aphex
mm,
Twin was one of the first like musicians I got into in a big way that wasn't creating anything with guitars.
mm. Yeah, I mean, the kind of moodiness, I definitely agree with that. And also like thinking about, I mean, specifically in kind of how bass music scene formed in the US, and how like artists like Skrillex had so much to do with it. And Skrillex was in from first to last, which when I was growing up was an emo band. Everyone like, it wasn't even like the most popular emo band, but they were kind of one of the big ones. And there was that era in like 2007, 8, when in the metalcore genre, everyone was doing the kind of breakdowns that became a massive thing, where the song would kind of like have this peak and it would drop into like essentially a drop. And I think like the concept of drops became in electronic music a lot more pronounced since that era. I mean, personally, anecdotally, um, so even like what we associate with a lot of the bass music, like the whole drop thing, it wasn't really a thing, in my opinion. And then if we go back, that whole concept in metalcore also came from like I don't know like when the first drop was, but some people say it was like the one. What's it called? One, I think, by Metallica, where the like Lars does that like double pedal thing.
Yeah.
Some people say it was Pantera, so they give a lot of credit to like that early Pantera era. But yeah, it's interesting how like that experience is so similar, and like how much it shaped electronic music, probably without people really recognizing it, or at least this
Yeah.
kind of like drop heavy side of electronic music.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. Yeah, there's just so much mutual interest. It's no wonder we ended up doing the same things. But yeah, we when you mentioned Grand Theft Auto and video games like Tony Hawk, like I couldn't resonate more because man, I was a skateboarder. I was actually the guy that would make the skate videos for my friends because I had a
Mhm. Oh
camcorder.
yeah, you're the filmer and the crew.
I was, yeah. I got the fisheye lens, and man, that was like such a great time to look back on. And that's actually how I learned video editing as well, which is like pretty much my profession, what I do for
Mm.
money these days. Um, and yeah, man, Tony Hawk, super. I love the music. It was super inspiring. She put me onto a lot of stuff I didn't know existed. And as well, Grand Theft Auto. I listened to every station. I think they were like hour loops, but I must have heard everything by the time I was finally done playing the game. But
Exactly.
yeah, I'm trying to remember if it was San Andreas. I think it was
Yeah, San
that.
Andreas had some really good radio stations, especially for me. The like that's when I really got into country music. It was like
Nice.
the country station was great. Vice City had a really good '80s channel. I mean, I don't really listen to '80s music much, but the Vice City soundtrack is something else.
So good.
Um, but yeah, I mean, beyond that, I think there's also like kind of going into where the label and Shivelight became also influenced a lot by kind of world music. Another experience of it was like starting to travel a bit more after I started finishing my university, and kind of getting in touch a bit more with like essentially a kind of Iranian or Asian identity, which I've probably suppressed because I was so infatuated by the idea of moving to the West. And like all this like culture that was coming externally. And when I was growing up, I had like there's a lot of disdain for this kind of theocracy that we lived in, so a lot of the religious elements were really like abrasive to our mindset. But then coming out of it and looking at it at a kind of more I guess like non-political and more spiritual way, like there was a kind of nostalgia to like a call to prayer, which when you're a kid and it goes off 5 times a day, you just associate it to like this annoying sound that wakes you up all the time. But
Sure.
over time, like yeah, and having more like psychedelic experiences, etc., like it was a kind of different experience relating to it, and that opened up to like early chill music, which had a lot of kind of Indian and Middle Eastern influence. And then I realized, oh, actually, I really like this kind of music. I'm kind of bored of just the kind of the standard, like kind of European or European adjacent pop music. And it just opened the door to a lot of different cultures, which kind of became something I was really passionate about. So through Outtallectuals, I started doing a blog. It was called Ethnofusion, and that went from like 2013 to 2018, where every month I would pick like 20 to 30 songs that I found that were kind of innovative in bridging world music and electronic music. And yeah, I did that for 5 years every month, and just led to a lot of discoveries. Probably a lot of the artists that you're into and I'm into, the
Hmm.
from like the desert dwellers of the world to like Murillo, and a lot of artists from also like different countries. For example, the kind of Do Hits crew in China with Howie Lee, and yeah, there's so many scenes around the world that like I discovered through that research. At that time, the Steven, aka Samaya, who has started this YouTube channel called Shivelight or Shivelight. He was, I think he was uploading more like future based music on there, and he somehow, I think, stumbled on the Outtallectuals SoundCloud or saw the blog, and he kind of liked some of those music, and he made a
Yeah.
mix featuring some of the music that I put in my blog. So some music from the label, some of the other artists, and that turned into his Fusion Alchemist mix, which has the Android Jones artwork. And for some
Yeah.
reason, it just completely blew up on YouTube. And then he messaged me. He was like, "Hey, I have this YouTube channel. I like what you're choosing. Should we like work together more closely?" And then I started recommending more music to him, and eventually it turned into a kind of partnership where I essentially co-curated with him, and the channel is kind of managed through Outtallectuals now, in how we like collect the royalties and share it with the labels we work with, and like the administrative part of it,
Right.
which is also, I guess, how we met.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So that's awesome to learn how that all happened. I have spoken with you and Samaya on a call before, and I got a brief version of how you guys come to know each other, but it's cool to hear the full story. Um, so many questions are popping up, but the first one is, how were you discovering this world music? Were you just kind of like, yeah, you really have found some amazing stuff, and I've been put on to so many amazing artists through your platform.
Thank you. That is kind of the mission, and I think initially it was mostly on SoundCloud. So I had the kind of Ethnofusion SoundCloud handle, which is now the Shivelight handle, and
Okay.
I think I maxed out the number of artists and kind of promo channels I could follow. And every
Hmm.
month, it was my mission to listen to every single thing that would show up on my feed for 5 years.
Yeah.
And it got
Nice.
pretty, like, it got really, really a lot at some point. Yeah, I mean, that took a lot of work. And if I found like a lead to a different country and I saw they would repost a lot of things of their friends, and that would be like key people that I would pay attention to. For example, in India, there's an artist called Three Oscillators, who's a really good producer. Doesn't necessarily always make this kind of like fusion sound, but he's really tapped into like what's happening in the underground scene in India. So I really followed like what he was sharing. Um, and same with like Brazil and I don't know, like around the world. And yeah, I mean, these days it's a lot easier to discover things because there's so many curated playlists. You still have to go through the action of listening, um,
Hmm.
but these days I don't really have time to do that at all anymore. I have
Hmm.
a Submit Hub page where like people can send demos to us, and that's kind of my steady flow of like discovery every day, which it's actually opened up to like music that it's not necessarily what I would always like consider my favorite, but
Hmm.
even like you can have like free submissions on Submit Hub that you can receive. So it's the free submissions are always a bit more like vague and not exactly what you want because people aren't spending the investment to get to your ears essentially. So that you just hear so much music you don't necessarily like, but you still have to give feedback.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I've discovered a lot of music through Submit Hub as well. Since I think 2018 when I joined. I'm not sure how many submissions I've had, but it's definitely like over 10,000 on there as well.
That's awesome, man. No, for sure, SoundCloud played such a important role in Time Wheel, and how I discovered so many artists and supported so many artists as well. We started way early on in San Antonio, just working with like local artists, and
Mm.
eventually it just started organically spreading throughout the states, and then slowly after that, the world. And yeah, SoundCloud, it used to be and it still is an amazing platform, but there's just so many other platforms now. I know YouTube Music has gotten very popular. Of course, Spotify, Apple Music kind of had an era there, and maybe it's still popping, but I feel like a lot of people switched over to Spotify.
Mhm.
But SoundCloud will always hold, like a nice spot in my heart and in my history. And I hope that they continue to develop that platform and that it can do some cool stuff in the future, because definitely discovered so much through SoundCloud.
Yeah, I still find like listening to like if I want to do some like deep discovery things, I'm always on like especially in electronic music, I'm on SoundCloud. Um, if I want to listen to things, if I want like an accurate view of someone's discography and maybe like more established artists, I'll either go to Spotify to see what it is that I'm looking for, but then I'll actually listen to it on YouTube Music because I think the YouTube Premium Music subscription thing is actually like the most economic way to have a subscription. You can have like a
Yeah,
family bundle for £20, which is like less than £4 for all of YouTube without ads, and then all of YouTube
right.
Music, which is essentially all of Spotify, which is a ridiculous deal. And yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, they're both kind of dubious companies, but I think perhaps I find Spotify to be a bit more cringe, just in terms of how it's
Yeah,
managed. So I
I
try
agree.
to like not give them money as much as I can. But then again, Google is Google as well. But Google's giving me a lot more in my life, so I'm happy to give them a little bit of money for what I get.
Yeah. Yeah, YouTube is the only one that I subscribe to now. I
Mhm.
used to have Apple Music, and I did enjoy. They had like a really cool radio system going on where I was
Okay.
also discovering cool artists through their radio. But yeah, after a while, it was just like YouTube, especially as my music taste shifted, which Shivelight actually did play a large role in. And if I'm not mistaken, the first mix that I discovered was the image was of a dude on a flying carpet, and I feel like it said "Magic Carpet Ride Mix." Does that ring a bell?
I think that is one of Samaya's fabled mixes. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that one blew me away. And of course, I'm a psychedelic guy. I had experiences um, with magic mushrooms, LSD, these types of things that I felt as if I encountered the origin of the flying carpet, because I was flying on a carpet, if that makes sense. So when I use that music for some of these journeys, it was just like so on point, and it gave me a new appreciation for world music.
Yeah, I mean that is like exactly like kind of feedback that like we live for. So like first of all, that kind of essentially like journey friendly music curation on the channel, like that's mostly credit to Steven. Like he has a very good ear for what is music that is supportive of that kind of experience and is like inducive to a kind of a good set and setting, and my music taste can get really strange, so I would always like ask for him if he thinks we should upload something or not. Uh, and and yeah, so I mean, for a lot of the people who use the music, like it's like they genuinely use it as a kind of service for when they're in that kind of mind space.
Right.
And also, those early mixes that you're talking about, that was when the channel wasn't monetized yet, so we're just making mixes because for the love of it. And when you see that it's growing and you kind of want to make a financial kind of situation out of it. So we were thinking, what's the best way to do it, which is kind of fair to the artist, but allows us to get something out of it. Which means then you have to get into like all the copyright arrangements with the different artists, different labels. So that requires us to understand like how that would work. So we essentially ended up on a kind of split mechanism where the songs. So we yeah, we moved away from like multi-label mixes. So if the mix that we upload has music only from one label or one artist,
Mhm.
and whatever royalties that it generates, we take around 30% and we give 70% to the artist or the label. And I think this was maybe till now from like the big promotional YouTube channels. It's like an incredibly low rate that we decided to take, and our idea was that if we want to make money from the mixes, it should be our music or music or something that we can like solely be the creator of, and that
Mhm.
30% has never really turned into like um, something that we can live off. It always goes back to the channel. Like both of us work full time, and our focus always was to just help as many artists as we can. Or sometimes we do the like a lot of the work. Like for example, we get the whole discography of a label, listen to all the songs in their catalog, choose the best ones that would fit a kind of Shivelight journey, get the
Yeah.
visuals, animate the visuals, and get the whole thing online. So each video takes, I would say, like up to like 15 to 20 hours. Well, not each, but I would say on average, maybe the videos take about 10 hours, 15 hours each.
Mhm.
And yeah, and it's very difficult to keep it up. I mean, both of us have had a lot of issues with burnout, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, it is a question, especially now. I feel like with the AI channels and it's just the competition's got so crazy on YouTube. It's very difficult to um, just keep up with all the changes. I'm sure you actually kind of relate to this with Time Wheel because I remember in like 2014, 15, I used to get a lot of things like way before I even knew you. Maybe it wasn't that early. I'm not sure exactly what year, but it was years before we met. Like I used to get a lot of things from Time Wheel on my feed, and I liked the page, and it just kind of disappeared, and you kind of forget about it if it's not served to you. And then it's
Right.
always so hard to go against that grain of figuring out what like the algorithms want you to do, whereas the people who subscribe to your thing would really enjoy it. It just gets very difficult to reach them. So I
Right.
would say like that is the most difficult part of everything is actually the people who have agreed to receive updates from you actually receiving it.
Right.
That is definitely the hardest part. The rest of it is just all love, and we love doing it and kind of giving those experiences to artists and listeners, and also getting the satisfaction of it ourselves that we did. We helped like create this kind of magic essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot there, and it's just such a different age in social media. But it's still worth it to fight the good fight and try and help these artists get some more eyeballs and ears on what they're doing because uh, as we know, man, music is a labor of love. There's so much passion poured into it. There's so much inspiration behind it. It absolutely creates worlds for people to travel through, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just say on the like memes and like psychedelic pages, I think a lot of the like I was talking to my friend last night saying that we're doing this podcast, and I was showing him some of the memes that you've been sharing on your personal and also on Time Wheel, and like we both made this observation that a lot of the kind of traditional psychedelic media is really corny. Like it's I get it. There's this like kind of self transcendence. Like it's really feels great to like have that discovery in your head and have this like moment of awakening. But a lot of the times they lack a kind of like self awareness and the kind of humor that you need to navigate all this like really like kind of like hypothesis based thoughts, which is like it's just everyone's trying to figure it out. There's nothing set in stone, and sometimes people take it way too seriously. So it's good to see those memes like kind of making fun of ourselves, which is something I think the psychedelic community really needs. And
Yeah.
yeah, so big up big up on the memes. Uh,
Thanks, man.
yeah, and also, I mean, regarding the like kind of algorithms and whatnot, I think Yeah, it's we also tried to move into other areas. So we started curating Facebook, Spotify playlists, kind of a few years ago, which definitely helped kind of bring that Shive Light crew to other platforms. But yeah, I mean, it's always trying to be like one step ahead of the next platform, and haven't moved on to TikTok yet. But I do like the idea of kind of listening to music in real time and kind of talking about it. I'm still figuring out what's the best platform for that. I think TikTok could be one where you just have like a live stream and you're listening to music, kind of like what people did maybe on Twitch, but before they got like copy striked. Um,
Right.
but I guess that's kind of a fun of it as well, right? It's like it's so unpredictable, just trying to
Yeah.
like ride the wave of it. But yeah, we're kind of slaves to this system.
Right. The Matrix was a documentary, that's what they say. But hey, man, I'm curious about the origin of the name. I guess it sounds like Samaya had made Shivelight, but I was curious, did it have anything to do with Shiva, the Hindu
No,
god?
this is like the
Okay.
biggest misconception. Uh, I don't know how we found it, but so shive. I think it's one of those like nice words that you see like onto share on Facebook, and no one like it's like hygge or ikigai. Those cool words from another culture that people like don't know and they love the meaning.
Mhm.
Shivelight was created by I think some author in the 19th century or early 20th century. I forgot who the name is, but shive means in older English it just means slice, and light means light. So essentially, it's when the kind of slices of light come through the branches of the trees, and you get those kind of like piercing lights coming through.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's more to do with that experience that you have in nature than a kind of the deity that people think is related to. Um, but yeah, I think that's something for Samaya to tell me more about. I
Sure.
can just tell you how I came up with Outtallectuals, which is just the worst pun in history and probably the most unspellable record label name, which has not served well in the last 13 years. Sometimes even I misspell it. Like that's how bad it is.
That's funny. Yeah, I think I understood Outtallectuals the moment I saw it, which is really cool. But as far as Shivelight, that's just so interesting because I actually have been working on a song that is titled "Sun Peers Through," and that was
Mm,
exactly what I was trying to capture. Was I guess Shivelight or Shivelight?
yeah.
The image in my mind as I was making this track was literally those rays coming through the sun, through the forest, the sun rays coming through the trees in the forest, and that I was just trying to cultivate the atmosphere of that. And wow, that's really cool to learn what it actually means because I'm super inspired by that very visual.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting how many people like missee the E as a A. Like, I think more people think it's called Shiva light than think it's Shiv light or Shive light. Like, I don't know. It's like almost like an optical illusion. It always surprises me how like common that thought is.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I would love to get into a little bit of like psychedelic territory here and spiritual territory. Um, have you had, that awakening experience? We were just kind of talking about how, it could be a little corny to post about in a certain aspect, and certainly I contributed to that at the very beginning of my awakening experience. But yeah, since having integrated a lot more and just discovered a lot of different ways of communicating ideas, I have found it to be, more grounded, but also it's got a certain level of like relatability when we can
Mm,
make fun of these ideas and still have the idea present, but it's not like here's a doctrine. It's just like
Mm,
we all know what this is, but it's a new way of viewing it. I
mhm.
feel for the psychedelic culture for us to add that sometimes even dark humor in. But yeah, I'm curious about your psychedelic voyages and your spiritual path and these types of things. Would you say you've touched into spirituality through psychedelics? And if so, like how did that happen?
Yeah, definitely. It was probably started in that kind of 2008-9 era, which was, I think, obviously starts with just cannabis, and that is kind of, yeah, I guess the starting point. Actually, I'd say maybe earlier. Maybe it's like you do like the kind of, um, I don't know. It's difficult because like Iranian culture has this kind of psychedelic tone to it in general. So I would say there's this kind of the interest in it is probably embedded without me even knowing about it. Kind of like the Sufi elements that kind of preside within the culture, and it's not like something you see every day. But if you go to like a nice traditional restaurant and someone's playing the sitar and like they're reciting Rumi, and this kind of like Iranian culture is very prone to that kind of like mystical Saudade kind of feeling, this like sorrowful, trying to like understand the meaning of life, but ultimately let's drink wine and get lost in the love of love and that kind of love of God, that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
I was very atheist when I was like growing up, but then I think when I started with probably salvia, in it's probably the it was actually legal in the UK, so maybe we thought it's something like weed, and then tried it, and it was definitely not like weed.
Right.
Um, and then yeah, just progressing into like a good variety of psychedelics, and yeah, definitely. I think what I was saying about it being corny, it's not necessarily it's corny to talk about it. It's just for me, like I had a few experiences that were really formative in like experiencing kind of synchronicities and serendipitous moments that I found really difficult to rationalize and understand, and perhaps trying to rationalize it a bit too much. And
Hmm.
they gave my life a lot of meaning at the time, and I thought I have a greater purpose, essentially, which very easily like went towards a kind of messiah complex where you think you have this kind of divine purpose and you're unique because this very kind of strange thing happened to you, which maybe it was very unique to me what happened, or everyone kind of maybe perceives it in that way, but it was actually the formation of Outtallectuals as a label was kind of born out of that experience as well. Like some things led to each other, and then one day I woke up after a few psychedelic experiences, and I thought about making the label as kind of a life pursuit. So it had a lot of impact on what I wanted to do. Um, but it was like that. The thing that I'm trying to reconcile in the last few years was um, how you kind of stay grounded while having grounded in kind of scientific thinking and things that can tether you to reality while still exploring these things that are like untested ideas. And that's where I think making fun of it is useful, but
Hmm.
it's not like I'm always making fun of it. It's just like a way for me to just keep a distance. And also at the time, I think in those years, the kind of there was like Elwid. Is that how you say it? That website with all the like trip.
Arrowwood, yeah.
Yeah, so there were things like that where we just weren't that aware of them. So a lot of our experiences we had were really like ad hoc, and you're just like mixing loads of different things you're not supposed to. And perhaps it wasn't like the best, some of the trips weren't the best way to do it. Um, so I had a range of like really positive trips, kind of negative trips, uh, and all very fascinating, like in hindsight. And since like 2014, so probably like a decade, I haven't really like uh, done any psychedelics, or as a matter of fact, like I haven't really taken any substances apart from the like occasional these days, like occasional smoking weed and maybe just having a couple of drinks. But that period from like 2009 to 2014, I tried to experiment as much as I could. The only thing
Yeah.
I didn't experience that I wanted to was DMT, but like the other things like mushrooms and LSD and mescaline, 2CB, like all that kind of thing, I had like the experiences
Right.
of. Um, yeah, it was a really fun and kind of tumultuous. Is that a word?
Turbulent. Yeah.
Turbulent. What was the other word? That's like. Um, Anyway, yeah, it was a really interesting time. It's like a lot of up and down, and these days my focus is really just mindfulness and just
Right.
awareness in like a sober state. And can I achieve that level of like passion to the unknown, and also like just my well-being without being on any substance? And that's kind of the main
Right.
mission, which is something I
Absolutely.
think that was really like unappreciated. I don't know. It's just maybe that was something that in like the kind of hedonism side of psychedelic culture mixes really badly with the spiritual side of it,
Yeah.
and it kind of doesn't create a very good blueprint of how to deal with these experiences, which is in
Right.
hindsight something I wish there was more of. But yeah, just growing up and
Yeah.
learning.
Absolutely. More integrative coaching is what we all could have benefited from during those phases, which there is a lot of now. There's definitely a lot of platforms that are, whether they're podcasters or, news kind of sites. I know, like, I think one's called Double Blind. There's a bunch of them, but yeah, integration is a big part of this experience, and so many of us as kids just lack that. But I do find that it's just a part of the journey. You kind of have to hit a wall in order for you to know what is too much, what is too far, where it's no longer helping. And I agree that I also went super ham in the psychedelic world for a long time, and essentially that quote, I think it was Terence McKenna that says something along the lines of, when you get the message, hang up the phone, is very true. And it's not that you have to hang up the phone forever, but it certainly shouldn't be every week or every weekend.
Mm,
Um, my kind of rule of thumb for myself is like quarterly psychedelic experiences, so 4 times a year, and they're usually pretty mild. I think
mm,
I am a particularly sensitive person to these compounds, and especially once you know what they do and what to look for, um, I get a lot more out of a smaller amount than I ever did before. So, like, for example, I feel like I can eat a gram and a half of shrooms, and it'll hit me the way that my first 3.5 gram trip hit me, because I'm just more sensitive. Like, I can feel it better. Maybe my body knows how to metabolize it better. Um, and you just don't need to go like super, super far into that realm to get the message. And so, I think it just comes with maturity. And
yeah.
as well, the whole Messiah complex idea is an intriguing one, and it's probably something I've experienced as well. But what I will say about it is, previous to these psychedelic experiences, I didn't feel any level of specialness about
Mm,
me or my life. I didn't think I had any particularly special insights or gifts, or I don't know. I was kind of down on myself. I didn't have a lot of hope for what I could achieve, for what I could attain, for how I could help the world. I didn't have a lot of hope. I was just kind of in this little woe is me vibration. And when I did have some of these experiences that did feel enlightening, it did lead to this sense of, I have a greater spiritual purpose here on earth, and I need to like do something with this precious gift of a life.
Mhm.
And it did lead to a lot of beautiful things. It led to this podcast. It led to Time Wheel. It led to creating music and actually feeling motivated and like I had something to say. You know what I mean? So I think there is a way to channel that special feeling, like, oh, I have a special gift, or like I've been given this gift through the psychedelic experience. But there is where it can go too far, and it almost gets inverted and becomes an ego raising. It raises your ego to like an even higher degree, to which you believe you're better than other people, and you talk down to people, and you always think you have the right answer. And
Mhm.
that's where it gets like, yo, that's not the work. That's not the good work. The work is realizing that we're all one, we're all connected, we're all equal, and we all are artists in one way or another. It's not that everyone's a painter or a musician, but writing, cooking, cleaning, raising kids, like everything can have this artistic flair to it when you know how to cultivate it. And that's, I feel like, what the message is from psychedelics.
Definitely. Exactly. Like, also, I think having these kind of synchronicities or experiences that make you feel special, in a way, it's a privilege to have those experiences, because maybe, at the time, it's basically like what stage you're in your life has a lot to do with this as well. So, like after 2014, it wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to do it. It just, I didn't feel like as settled as I did when I was younger for various reasons. And after 2017, there was a lot of kind of trauma in my family. As it's a complete different story we don't have time for, but essentially my dad was taken hostage in Iran for 5 years.
Oh, man.
And so, trying to deal with these like extreme things that are happening in your life, and you don't want any more uncertainty. You're actually trying to find the things that aren't changing, like the things that you can depend on to be there, no matter what
Right.
changes. And so yeah, in moments where life is more free, I feel, or like maybe there's too free and you want something to just kind of give a little bit direction to your life. Maybe for some people this is what is a good tool to help them like achieve that passion, like you said. And some people naturally have it for, again, life experiences. Like for me, outside music, at the moment I work at a human rights organization, and since I was much younger, I had an interest in working in like kind of charity sector and helping people. This was like far before um, any of my psychedelic experiences. So perhaps it was like experiencing injustice in Iran from a very young age. That everything you wanted to do was illegal, from listening to music to having a girlfriend, and just even knowing any girls, and any kind of fun activity you wanted to do except eating was illegal. So you feel the sense of injustice, and for some people that is psychedelic enough in like a bad trip kind of way that you use it. Yeah, it's like a microdosing a bad experience living in Iran, like a bad trip every day. Because
Yeah.
there's good moments, but that thing is enough fuel to give you passion that you want to fight for something better. Um, and for every person, that kind of manifests differently, right? Some people maybe, um, whether they've had trauma or not, they need a different kind of, they need a spark to find something new. Or sometimes you actually have a passion and you need a spark to tell you that actually you need a different passion. So maybe it helps to like unlock those moments mentally to pursue something
Mhm.
different. um, and yeah, I mean, for me, most of the kind of serendipity and um, a unique thing that psychedelics gave me that wasn't necessarily related to kind of like purpose for like a drive or passion to do something with my life that I enjoy was actually more towards understanding like the nature of existence and life and what it means, and like
Right.
how we interpret time, and just like kind of like a universal understanding, kind of, and also towards like eschatology, like what happens when we all die and the universe dies. So just with also mixed with like religious doctrine and like trying to understand all these things. That
Hmm.
was where I found it really interesting, where it was more existential rather than like my specific life. And that's also where it got a bit dicey, because you're trying to understand things that basically no one has really understood properly before, and you're very prone to kind of jumping to conclusions and kind of having a Dunning-Kruger effect. But also, it's quite fun. If you know how to go into that hole and come out, it's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, you do have to have a fair amount of skepticism about your own insights. I think that's
Mm,
maturity, that's healthy. It could not have to be as grand as it feels, but there could still be a jewel to pull from some of these experiences that can help you, but it isn't as grand as it feels like. It could be just so simple. It could be, it's not that you are the reincarnation of Jesus, it's that you should be compassionate towards others, if that makes sense, you know?
yeah, yeah, and you can be both of those things. Like one thing was like maybe I am Neo, but maybe we're all Neo. We all like it's not. It's just because I figure that I'm Neo doesn't mean other people aren't Neo. Like we all have
Right,
this kind of purpose, or maybe someone doesn't want to be Neo. Maybe someone wants to be Morpheus.
right.
Like keep it to myself. This is my journey. If other people ask me, I'm happy to share it, but it doesn't have to be like everyone stop like this thing I
Yeah,
learned because I am important and what I think is important. Like that was very hard to overcome. um
yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
I
it's
relate
good
to
to
that.
be aware of it now for sure.
Absolutely. Well, that's great, and I love to share these ideas because some people are just starting the psychedelic path, and maybe they're hearing this and this could point them in a direction that'll just be more integrative and more helpful to not fall too far down the rabbit hole because it goes super freaking deep. And I've seen people and talked to people who have gone crazy level deep. And yeah, it can be harmful to your mental
Mm,
health, to the quality of your life. Um, as they say, the difference between a medicine and a poison is in the dose and in the amount
mm.
you take. You have a headache, you could take one aspirin and the headache goes away. But if you take a bottle of aspirin, I mean, you're gonna have the worst headache of all time. You're gonna die. So it's like
Yeah.
it's all just dose dependent.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, especially with kind of rave culture now, there's this kind of, I mean, it's probably the same in the US and the UK, maybe a little bit more in the US because you have so many things that are like decriminalized. Here, we still struggle to like get a bag of weed that we know like what percentage THC it has. It's ridiculous. Like, if we could.
Hmm.
If you could know what's in the substances, I mean, that's also partially like you buy a bag of mushrooms, you have no idea what it is. Like, you have to go and pick it yourself, specific times of the year, etc. But I think one thing is which is an issue is like how dependent people are on these things to have a good time, like not separating the hedonism from the spiritual side. And as I said, like because I've been essentially kind of drug free for most of the drugs for a good 10 years, I find it a really nice challenge to go to a gig or a festival and try to like have that liberated sense, and in a way like go crazier than most people who are on substances, and they look at me like, dude, you look fucked, and you're like, yeah, I am, but it's just like I'm just trying to like consciously take my own guards down and like get into that mindset without actually like using the tools. I did this thing as a joke once at a rave where I was just like gurning really hard, but I was sober, and I was just like chewing gum essentially. And I saw some people who were really fucked up that night. The next day they were like, "Dude, you were gone." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." uh, it's just like playing with reality like that. Like you don't always need to take substances to have fun. Like that's like just being able to unlock those experiences is itself really fun. Or just like enjoying actually dancing. Like we live in this vehicle and
Right.
it moves in all kinds of different ways. Like it's so much fun to move it, like to listen to frequencies, to look around. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
just find joy in all the senses that we have. Like that
Yep.
itself is for me. I'm trying to make that enough for me at the moment. But it's
Mhm.
hard. It is hard.
Yeah. No, I feel that, and in certain festival settings, I actually do have more fun sober because I do find that this vulnerability opens up with certain medicines, and you just don't feel as comfortable being around a ton of people because
Mm.
it feels like you're naked or something, you know, like. And some people are comfortable being naked around people. I've not gotten to that point yet, but so often it'll be a counterintuitive like thing where it's like, oh, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go enjoy the festival, and then turns out I don't enjoy the festival. I'm just going to like do my solo trip in the van, and I'll have a great trip by myself, but it just felt so much more controllable, more sacred to be in privacy, if that makes sense. So
Mm.
I do
Definitely. It's more
I do
controlled.
have a yeah, I have a good time at festivals with just like a beer, you know what I mean, or nothing at all sometimes. So I definitely relate to that.
Yeah, also like another thing I find quite fun sometimes, like depending on who I'm with, if like a close friend is tripping, I like being around them as a non-tripping person and just kind of experiencing what they're going through. And just make also they know that I'm kind of reliable, so they probably have a better trip knowing that I'm around.
Right.
I also kind of have a good idea of what's going on. And if they're like, am I doing something weird, I can assure them that no, it's all good, like don't worry about it. But then I kind of like I remember what it feels like, so I can, if I try hard enough, I can get into that mindset, just empathetically essentially. But
Yeah.
yeah, my visuals are still like normal.
Yeah. Well, there absolutely is something about a shared mind space that can occur
Mm.
on psychedelics, and even without them, especially when you're good friends with someone. So I resonate with that. And I feel like when I've had certain experiences with like psychedelic experiences with certain good friends of mine, we absolutely do some weird hive mind tele not telekinesis. What's it called? It's
Telepathy.
like telepathy. Yeah, it's like they'll think of something and then it'll register to me to say, and they'll be like, I was thinking of that exact
Mm.
thing. It has happened 10, 20, 30 times. It is so weird, but it just makes me think that like our mental extends beyond the body. It feels like it's all happening in our brain, but it's a super subtle vibration, and it
Mm.
takes kind of being like open, super receptive and open minded to be able to receive that. And it can only happen, I feel like, in close proximity. Um, it feels a little more far fetched that I could like connect with someone across the world in that way. Maybe it happens. There's a whole like movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats, where they kind of try to do that type of remote viewing, interesting stuff. But at least when you're like in a close proximity with people you know well, and one or both of you are on psychedelics, like certainly some strange hive mind stuff
Mm.
starts happening. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, it's weird. Like when like one of you wants to start laughing, and it's like almost you're waiting for the other person to start laughing before you because you know you're both gonna
Yep.
laugh. Yeah, and it's hard to really explain like that connection that you
Mhm.
have. Or you could be like you're hugging someone and you genuinely feel like there's no separation between your bodies. Like you just literally become like one person for a brief moment.
Right.
Um, Definitely. I mean, again, it's because it's been so long. I can't like I don't remember all of the like sensation, but definitely there
Sure.
was some of those. Uh, but it's also like nowadays I think like, can I unlock that like sober? Like, can I actually like have such like deep and meaningful friendships where we can get so in tuned with people, or even people you meet? Like, can you immediately create a connection that feels genuine enough? You know, when you just like talk to someone and sometimes you can tell that they've started thinking about something else. Like
Yeah.
they're looking at you and they're nodding, but they're actually not paying attention. And sometimes you
Sure.
can pick that up. It's a really like subtle vibration. But if you're
Yep.
like present enough, it's sometimes possible to pick up on those things.
Yeah.
And it essentially is like how much of it comes down to presence and like being mindful. Um, is it because in that moment where you're both on the substance, you both feel so in the moment and your senses are so heightened that you pick up on the tiniest movements that your bodies are making? You know,
Hmm.
you pay attention to all the little details of the breath and everything. Like,
Right.
um, whereas maybe we don't because we always have like the the things like the jargon in the back of the head. We never like 100% present with people. You know.
Hmm.
Um, And in a way, actually, you know, if like I don't know if you have that, but you know, the kind of anxiety that sometimes comes with like a psychedelic state, I feel like it can be very similar to the anxiety that comes with like a panic attack situation, where like
Yeah.
life suddenly feels really like impending, doomy, and kind of like almost unreal, like that's that kind of scary unrealness. And I forgot what I was trying to say, but yeah, it's like the bad trip can definitely come in a sober state. Like there's been sober states that have been really anxious, and I felt very similar to a bad trip. So if the
Right.
bad side is possible, then surely the good side should also be possible. You know?
Yeah. For sure. Well, I will say, I think with meditation and daily spiritual practice, we can absolutely cultivate our minds to be that perceptive and that present. It is work. It's hard work. It's much harder than just popping a little something. But I have done that type of work for a decade now, and the intensity of it varies. Some days I'm like meditating every day for an hour or more, and some days it's like, yo, I'm gonna pop in for 10 minutes, and this is a busy week. But certainly, the more you meditate, the more present I feel, the more that kind of mental chatter subsides, and I can just be like more hyper present, and certainly getting intuitions about things like what we're talking about how you can kind of
Mm.
sense where someone is at when you're, interfacing with them in person. So with enough meditation, study, spiritual practice, yoga, all these things, certainly I think it is possible. It's just a lot more work.
Cheat codes.
Yeah.
But some of it's not possible. I think like the visual distortions and stuff. Some of those stuff you need some foreign agent in your bloodstream to be able to induce some of those, like
Oh
the
yeah.
visual stuff at least, or the audio, like the echoey kind of things you get from, for example, salvia, like that. You need some plugins for that.
Yeah, yeah, certainly for the crazy level visionary states. I mean, I have heard rumors, but this is after people meditate for years in a cave type of thing, that they can get into some DMT visionary states. But I think that that's reserved for very few hyper disciplined people.
Mm,
And again, I can't say for certain that it can happen because it hasn't happened to me, but I've gotten close. I will say things like, I feel a little shroomy, but it's not like, whoa, I feel like I'm on 10 grams of shrooms, like through
mm.
meditation. It's always just a little shroomy. So, but yeah, man. Well, that's about the time we've got today, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. And I would just love for you to let people know where they can find your work, for Outtallectuals and Shivelight and anything else you want to shout out.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thanks a lot. It's nice to have this kind of conversation and try to
Yes,
um,
sir.
just
Absolutely.
describe things that are very hard to describe. It's always nice.
Exactly.
So people, I guess, yeah, the Outtallectuals is slash like some gibberish everywhere, which probably is easier to find a link for in the description of wherever it is. A Shivelight is like Shivelight, and I think it's Shivelight official in most places, or it's just Shivelight. And I also myself DJ and produce music very infrequently when I have time. At My artist name is Baxtak, so Baxtak, which is a kind of play on the word Baxtak, which is a Iranian sleep paralysis monster. Um, but yeah, that's all of it, I guess. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, dude, thank you so much, Aryan, for being here today. Thank you to all the listeners for getting this far, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Yes, sir. Ciao.
Ciao.